My name is Mc Quillan. I live here in this townland, Rockawfield, Clonus. Was born on the 24th of October 1942 in the nursing home in Clonus. The ink came as powder in a bag, and you mixed it with water and you went around and you filled all the inkwells. That was part of your duties in the morning. And you brought in an armful of sticks, and that helped to light the fires. Like, the school at him almost ran on nothing apart from teachers' wages as far as I saw. There was no electricity. And there was just no amenities of any kind. There was no running water. We carried the water in the bucket. Two people would be sent with a big pole and hang a bucket in the middle to go to a local spring well up the road. And then there was always a row between those two people because the bucket might not be in the centre and one would be carrying a bit more than the other. And there was a good foundation for a bit of an argument. And it might be half an hour before the return, arguing on the road to avoid school. The teacher at this end here, she was Molly Mackin, long since dead, and she smoked an awful lot of, that time, plain cigarettes, which were in a Slade packet. And she was so busy smoking and teaching and stuff, she'd leave the packet open all day with its mouth open. When she'd be doing a long equation on the blackboard for us, if you timed it right, you'd time to just nip over, whip a fag, and back in your desk before she even noticed. But if she was doing short little bits of sums, well, you wouldn't risk it because you know you would never get back to safety. That was a trick I polished in my time at school, you know, when you're just beginning to smoke and has no cigarettes or money to buy more. And, you know, she never even missed them. She was such an avid smoker, she was really besotted with smoking, yeah. And then the lady at the other end, she had her own kind of a system in the mornings. Her diet would consist of a raw egg cracked into a cup and a good skate of brandy in it. And that seemed to be set her up, for that was her 11s. And she seemed to go really well on that stuff. The school ran here in a way that it was sort of half of each. You got as far as third class facing the other gable, facing your junior teacher, who was the woman with the eggs and the brandy. And then when you got to third class and you progressed into fourth, you were turned around 180 degrees, and then you're facing this lady with all them cigarettes. And then you went to sixth class, and that was you finished. You're now ready for secondary, other school. Kathleen and I were at the same school, Jure School, National School. We almost went to the same spring well, which meant I didn't travel far to meet a mate, and a good mate, the best. We decided then, we hadn't been very much in touch over the years, maybe went to a couple of dances, pictures a few times, no big deal at all, and then just suddenly decided that by 1970 we would get married and set up a house here. This house that we're in now was a semi-derelict old type farmhouse, would have been built in the year shortly after the famine period, and would have been partly stone wall and partly mud wall, just a bit of an old ruins. So my father and myself decided in 1969 that we'd do it up a bit, and one thing led to another till we ended up, we nearly built a new house around the old house and dry lined it and done what we could with the roof, new timbers, new slates. And we did up one room at a time when we got married in 1970. Geraldine, the oldest child, was born 25th of September 71. Next one born was Pather, born 18th of August 72. Next one born was Katrina, born on the same day, 12 calendar months later, which almost meant something like twins damn near. Edward was born the 9th of January 1975. And in 1979, on the 29th of September, the day the Pope landed in Ireland, our Paula was born. So that was the five of our family. Unfortunately, last year in 07, Padder died suddenly with this sudden death syndrome, heart attack, whilst playing a wee bit of soccer at the back of UCD in Dublin. Couldn't be resuscitated or saved, just dead. He had been married. Rosalind and himself had their own business in Dublin. They're both architects, and they had two kids, and Rosalind was expecting another one, who is now a little boy called Rory Padder, and he's now about 10 and a half months old, starting to walk. Left school at sort of 13, went to technical school in Clonus for 2 more years, Halfway through that I started to join up with a radio correspondence course in a college in Wales, and eventually got to going over to Wales to do some of the practical stuff. A bit by bit I got that finished by about 1958, which was City and Guilds of London then. That was the achievement, which wouldn't be much talked about nowadays, but it was quite a good qualification at that time, which got me to start working on radios as an apprentice first, and then eventually to be able to start to work on televisions in the 60s. These service department, as you'd call it, or would be known as that, would have always been at the backs of television shops in the high streets, you know. And like I worked for a lifetime in places like that, you know, and you were kind of hid up the back, and you were a strange, mysterious character that smoked 100 cigarettes a day, and sometimes didn't shave, and sometimes 2 different shoes on you, and I survived that bit. And then I set this up on my own, and it's almost, it doesn't have to be a replica of anywhere I ever worked, but it is kind of the same way in that I am right-handed, so I sit the same way at a bench. Half the things that you see up on high shelves would have been salvage, basically, to be able to get this or that little bit off a whole panel, which in some cases would be obsolete, not available, and somebody's very, very glad to get it. Gets their old telly going or their radio. And so even though it looks a cluttered mess of junk, it isn't. There's still plenty of action there, and can be when it's needed. The television business at the minute is, well, first of all, it's sales, of course. Secondly, it's repairs and service. We are also agents for electric fencing, observation cameras for cows, calving and livestock in general. Basically, those are the things we sell, the products we sell. The rest is repairs. We do install satellite, including Freeview satellite, Freeview set-top boxes, which are now becoming popular as people want to go digitised, and even normal everyday aerial work, climbing roofs, putting up aerials, taking down aerials, repairing aerials. Please fix it if you can and keep down the bill. That's the usual sing-song there. So we do our best for people to not create much debt or too many bills. Living in a rural society here, people are conservative. They're not as flamboyant as people who live in cities and kind of throw stuff away. I have repaired radios and televisions about 5 years after they're done, doing Lazarus jobs, you know, at minimum cost, of course, even sometimes using second-hand reclaimed parts from disused other pieces of equipment. And I suppose I would be generally known as that, as a very conservative person, that I don't waste anything. Anybody that could get over the beginnings of colour in 1868 and survive that and still go back into mainstream television engineering is tough cookie, I'll tell you. I still work away, even though I often think of retirement. And what worries me about retirement is not the lack of money or doing the business, is what would I do with myself. The wife Kathleen says, God forbid the day Sean retires, because it'll drive her up the wall. She's worried about her mental stability when I do retire. We have 30 acres of land here. We have 12 cattle. We keep 12 bullocks annually. So we kind of sell 6 and winter 6 and then buy 6 and so on. And that's continuity for the bit of a farm and keeps it in use. We make hay, which I sell, and we make silage, which we keep for our own use, for our shed in the winter. We grow our own spuds and a very few bits of vegetables, as much as anyone would want, and kind of semi-organic, not fully, bit of fertiliser and a bit of spray against the blight. Starts on the button, as I will show you. Hopefully. It's nice, it's a very good, sweet, nice running engine, that. And it's 100% reliable. It always starts winter and summer. We don't use it a lot in the winter anyway. It was more of a summer tractor even when I grew up. When I was about 10-year-old, I learned to drive on that tractor, because it was easy to drive. You had complete total vision of your front wheels, judgments and all that stuff. Reasonably good brakes, reasonably light clutch to handle when you're only 10 and you're not really a big man. And you felt a big man when you could drive a grey Ferguson tractor. Well, the younger the better in my days, yeah, because you were so all psyched up about the idea of being able to drive a tractor. You felt completely adult overnight, you know what I mean? Dangerous, yeah, especially on hills, but my father wouldn't let us near hills. It was only around the street and that, you know. My farm tractors are old. My car is old, Jaguar 1974, which is vintage, but we do have another car that we run about in. The car we have, the good car, the Jaguar, is something you don't just run into town for a loaf of bread in. First of all, it's far too expensive on petrol, and secondly, we don't want to abuse it, we want to keep it as it is. Good car, yeah, nice car to drive, luxuriously comfortable. Yeah, we do weddings. I think there's 7 or 8 done this year. We do Deb's dances, which are to me a bit like mini weddings. It just might as well be without a ring. And it's just as committal and it's just as important, and hairstyles and fashions galore. And I put on my peaky cap and my bow tie and gloves and kind of look the chauffeur eleganza as you do step out of a nice looking car, you know, and do the whole spiel, and the bottle of champers in the boot and the bucket of ice, and well, you try to do it right for people because that's probably what they want to pay you for anyway. I went on the air in April 1971, broadcasting from a spare bedroom in our house. We were only married 1 year at the time, and I did it as first of all, a technical challenge to think. I'd spent all my life working on the receiving end of radios and eventually televisions, as we do, and then I decided, right, have a go at the other end, try transmitting, see what that's like. I built it from ex-army surplus parts, old valves, old any bits of things, made coils, ground the crystals myself, really making a radio transmitter. And then just to prove that it works through all and wide, we actually started to do a 2-hour show Saturday night and Sunday night from 9:30 to 11:30, playing mostly American country and western, and indeed local show bands, the likes of Big Tom, Larry Cunningham. They all supplied us with albums of LPs and indeed 7-inch EPs for material to play. And it was a wonderful achievement and a great satisfaction to me to even do that. I was pioneering. I thought I was Marconi all over again. It was mostly at night and it was mostly a hobby because I was only a year married, starting a family, and it was just something to be at, and a wonderful achievement when you got it done. And the way you knew it worked, because we didn't have a telephone, we didn't have definitely no mobiles or anything, and the way we know it's working is people coming up onto the street with requests written on pieces of cement bags and flour bags and kids' school books. Please play blah 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 for so and so whose birthday is tomorrow, and do not forget. Being illegal, pirating, you wouldn't ask anybody how you're getting it, because he could be the postmaster who'd be out to nab you, or the local sergeant, or somebody, anybody that was of a legal status might be out to grab you as a pirate. So I had to do a few moves here and there, changed address, had a takedown procedure perfectly honed down to about 15 minutes, gone, and reset at another address with another aerial and another earth system. So I had 3 of those. One was north of the border, and if they came pressure on there, and they did, we had to jump straight back into the Free State and reset, redo, and go back on the air again. And we done that about 3-4 times, and every time it was just the same routine. And I remember once, while we were in the north of the River Finn, which was technically the UK, and that time there was army helicopters going about every morning on patrol, of course. And I remember coming up with the idea. Now the aerial was 60 feet high from one pole to another, and we let it down one Sunday, and I hung a few derelict shorts and trousers and knickers or whatever we could get our hands on it, so that the army might think from an overhead view that they might think it's a clothesline. Now the woman that could put clothes up on a line 60 foot high would be some very tall person, you know, but it was never the army that made us move from that address. There was another bit of pressure on the road, actually on the ground, and we had to do a runner one night in a boat up the River Finn to a friend's house in the moonlight, and the river was in flood, and there was places we were in the flood and not in the river, But we got there eventually and got saved our transmitter and a boat full of LP records. That was the most dramatic occurrence we had in the whole spiel of local radio. But it was good crack, I enjoyed it. Not breaking the law, just bending it. We weren't playing kind of way out stuff, you know what I mean? It was stuff you'd hear every night on Radio Luxembourg, which was the other very popular station in the 60s. The only other fella that had done it prior to me was a fellow man called Ronan O'Rahilly, who set it up on a ship 3 miles outside Dundalk Harbour, which kind of meant he was ex-territorial outside territorial waters. I thought, well, he is doing it in an uncatchable way. He's out 3 miles. And here's me risking my neck on mainland dry sod Ireland trying to do a similar thing, surrounded by canopies of trees and mountains of hills, trying to squeeze out 30 watts and do your best. This is a replica of the original little transmitter I built in 1971 to have local radio here in this region. And I'm nearly sure it was the first land-based pirate radio here in Ireland. People used to look forward to the weekend to listen to this local Mc Quillan's radio, as it became known. I actually developed a name for it called Radio 99, which was just an imaginative thing of my own, that it didn't have to be 99 or 98. It just seemed one of them unusual numbers that you'd pick out of your, just take it out of your head. All these little coils and things have to be tuned to the exact frequency, plus or minus 150 kilohertz, or the central frequency that you're using on FM. And it's about 10 watts full output. And on a good site, now if you have a good high site above sea level and a good earth on it, you would be covering 5-6 miles pretty good, fairly clear, you know. When I got it built years ago and suddenly decided, well, it would need some kind of a housing, and all of a sudden there's a biscuit tin sitting about, and so all of a sudden it becomes very useful, and it became the housing. So it's chocolate cookie creams. Bit of a plug for Jacobs, maybe, I'm not too sure. But that's the essence of it. It works well. It's really reliable little thing, you know. It's not pretentious in any way. It doesn't have to be any better than that. Well, you could build it into a cabinet and make it all kinds of loddy-doddy stuff on it, but it wouldn't work any better. It just works just as happily in the biscuit tin. Its first job last year was the Flat Lake Festival here at Hilton, which was local radio by Pat McCabe. He called it Radio Butty, and we got him built a little studio in a hay barn at the back of the castle, and he broadcast away on this for the 3 days of the festival, playing live requests, talk and shows and innuendo and bits of local crack and puns on titles of records, and good bit of old crack to listen to. And it was covering sort of half the parish around here, maybe 5 mile radius, and everybody enjoyed that. It was nostalgic for myself, you know, and I could certainly see that Pat McCabe enjoyed it. He was having an ego trip on the microphone, and he is so eloquent at talking. He doesn't need a script, he can just freelance, and he's so eloquent just to listen to him that I thought, well, there's a man, you know, 30 years later or something, having an ego trip and doing what I remember I did. And at least he is me standing looking at him. I had nobody looking at me, because I had myself locked in a spare bedroom in the house, mostly because of safety. It was too dangerous for anyone to be in near me because of radiation. I was aware of the fact that I was sitting in the middle of a lot of radiation at that frequency, at 1.6 megahertz then, just the top of the medium wave band. It shouldn't be injurious to your health, but all kinds of radiation do something. Maybe it turned my hair grey, I'm not sure, or even uprooted some of it.
Let's put it this way, we went to school together in Chur, and I remember Sean arriving with his mother with him by the hand. A very quiet, nice little fella. That's a long time ago, man.
Never changed much.
Big changes from that day. Sean has two sons. And Sean was one of two boys. Now I'll let Sean tell you the story. They ended up as one in both families, Sean.
5 generations of us was every time 2 boys, 1 died. We had an uncle that died in the Great Flu of 1918. My father had a granduncle. My father had a brother, Seamus, who died with TB in 1938. My only brother died in 1967 with a brain tumour, and last year, God rest, Adder died with a heart attack.
But it's a little bit unique for that to happen, isn't it? And so many generations for one of the boys to pass on.
Then when I was 19, I nearly was gone before Desi. Had a bad accident.
Oh sure, I was going to get around to talk about it. One bad accident. How many bad accidents did you have?
Well, that was the worst one.
Was it? Was that the fall you had in Cavan?
Cabin, yes.
You fell 90 foot that time?
Yeah, from mast into a backyard or something.
Well, he was 90 foot up, and he was 3 gardens away when the mast broke and dropped him off in the garden.
Third house up in College.
They had to break the door down, the people were on holidays.
They were on holidays
and get him out. You were in rehab a long time after that.
Yeah, I was 6 months in the wheelchair in Dunleary. Both legs broken, both arms, just a mess, you know, but still alive, obviously. So I ended up not too badly. Nails and screws and pins in one arm 4 inches short of it. Most of it's good now.
I have a great recollection. I have to tell you this story, being at Mc Quillan's. There were 2 people on the dropper. Sean was driving the tractor in Owen Larry's field, putting in the potatoes.
A bale rung and you drop one every 11 inches, so that the potatoes would grow 11 inches apart, theoretically. Well, that's how it should be in the real world. But when this fell on the back, do you remember that?
Yes, indeed.
He had his leg away across.
There was a young lady sitting on the tractor over here, Geraldine Hughes, and on this side was Brian, your next door neighbour.
That's right.
Now, on the way, this is a true story. I'm watching them doing. On the way down, Brian had an old pair of trousers on him, and the trousers got tangled up in the drive of the tractor.
That's right.
And I looked over and I seen Geraldine Hughes in awe. The drive caught Brian's trousers, whipped the trousers off him. He's standing there with no underpants on him, sitting on the tractor, and she's looking at him and she jumped off. And he is covered over. You remember that?
He headed for the hedge and held his hands over
Yes.
the important things to not let it happen. And then I was sitting there and thinking,
People would have, but that's true.
what did that happen? You know, I was thinking, what do you do with a situation? Do you call him back? Well, no, you don't do that, do you?
No.
Tell her to close her eyes. You don't do that either. It was a very stuck situation.
It was one of them little things that happened just once in a lifetime.
Stuck things that you can't get out. You know, difficult. The shreds, I wound up on the
Whip
drive
the
shaft.
trousers clean off.
They were lucky they were kind of rotten and they weren't too well attached to him, so they come off easy. Otherwise he'd have been killed.
Oh well.
No undergarments.
Not a hit.
Nothing
Or if he
thing.
had, all went with the trousers. All we needed the drive shaft except him. That's true. The next thing you seen him was standing with the bare arse over your old Larry's ditch. Trying to hide the stuff, you know. I've made them for years here, make them from copper, and this is just a back shed wee bit of a thing, but everything works, you know, you make them till they actually do blow. But sometimes when I'm testing them here, the dog, I'd be working here late at night, and the dog would be standing about, and years ago he got the idea that he could dance if I blew the horn. So it became a kind of an upstage act, a kind of a duo act between me and the dog. That we have some harmonious agreement that if I blow certain notes, he'll bark and jump. It's just a bit of crack, really, not too serious. It's a bit like pottery. It's a bit of a creative art. As I say, it's a bit like sculpting from basic metal, you know, it is a form of sculpture, all right. It's interesting and it's a self-satisfaction when you get it made. These mirrors here are sitting at a critical angle. There are two basically, and there used to be three of those. I call them my C microscopes, which gives them a better technical name than just calling them a mirror. And I have spent most of my life working at the backs of televisions, watching the horses going the wrong way when they're running in the race. But that's what I call them, my C microscopes. It's disciplinarian, you know, it's something you do it because you like doing it, and the other half of the equation is that you have to do it because you're dealing with the public, and so that's half of it. So that needs satisfaction in one direction, and the other half of that is me being satisfied with what I'm actually doing. And I don't know anything beyond that, and I don't want to know, and so therefore I have no high aspirations. So if you're happy with your lot, it's grand. Wouldn't be overly religious. Now, I've read quite a bit about other religions, and I still held on to Catholicism, you know, as Christianity, or one version of it anyway. It's good enough, it does me all right. It's something, it's like belonging to some club or other. You belong to somebody that promises salvation, but during your lifetime they baptise you, they confirm you, they marry you, they bury you when it's all over. So that's something to be an organised society with, rather than nothing. You can make comparisons, I suppose, between science and religion to some extent, but it's very difficult to reconcile the two. You know, they don't just complement each other, I think. Like we're all talking about the world as we live in it. We're talking about the hereafter. And for all we know, this might be the hereafter. We don't know. It may have been around before. It's possible in another life form. Who knows? I have had times and occasions when I thought I recognised something. I remember once standing in Trafalgar Square in London looking at a black iron railing, and I'm almost certain I've seen it before. Yet I never was there before in my lifetime that I know about. It didn't annoy me subliminally or any other way, you know, that I could keep on top of technology and staying alive and earning a living and rearing a family, and well, that brought along with it was more bits of problems, not a lot, but a bit anyway. I mean, you had financial worries and constraints. We didn't have 3 foreign holidays a year like when we got married. We were lucky sometimes to get to Mass for half an hour on a Sunday in time, you know, because there was always something to be busy at. And so we weren't into any big luxury stuff like that. We lived an ordinary lifestyle, just not frugally. We had always plenty enough, you know, to do, but we certainly we did not live in any luxury standard, or didn't want to. We never had any, myself and Kathleen never had any aspirations like that. We didn't want all this exuberance or appearance of exotic wealth. If I was to sum up my whole lifetime, you could write it on the back of a stamp. It wouldn't add up to very much. But it would be all about unanswerable questions and unquestionable answers. Half of what we say is questions. And you have to stop and think, is that a question? No, that's an answer. Reverse it, then it's more confusing. Yeah, I always think that myself. But half the things we say